Interviews don't happen by accident. They are created and engineered. The best hosts are the ones who consistently land incredible guests, ask unforgettable questions, and even turn one conversation into years of opportunities. So, how do we make all this happen? To help us with the answers is our guest today, Michael D. Walker. Michael's Substack publication is Booked with Legends, the weekly playbook for booking fascinating guests, asking unforgettable questions, and building powerful relationships through interviews. Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to be here, Mike. And got to commend you again for rocking that hat. I cannot rock a hat, so I'm partially jealous. But looking great and glad to be here.
Michael, I'm glad you're here. Flattery will get you everywhere with me. And if I had a head of hair like that, I wouldn't need to wear a hat. So, Michael, there's a lot to get through. You are the right guy to be talking to when it comes to how to invite guests onto a podcast or a show or a live on Substack. And I know you've got the answers with your background. We want to dive straight into this. And I'm going to go way back into the past because you've said that much of what you do today, you learned from your grandfather, and that advice from your grandfather or lessons learned from your grandfather has carried over into almost all you've done in life since. What did you learn from your grandfather?
Actually, this is back before they were really strict about labor laws, but my grandfather managed back when they used to have something called full service gas stations. So, you know how today everybody gets out and pumps their own gas and takes care of everything themselves. But used to be that you would have somebody come out and they would fill up your gas, check the air pressure on your tires, check your oil, clean your windshields, the whole works, full service. And one summer I started doing that, working for my grandfather when I was only 8 years old. But I picked up so much stuff, sales, marketing, but even more so than that was connecting with people, connecting with strangers. And so I just got to where I would just ask them simple questions. Oh, hey, where are you going? Or if I noticed that their license plate was from out of state, I'd ask them, oh, is this your first time in Minnesota? Or I would have some sort of opening question. And that's where I wasn't really taught that, but I noticed my grandfather did it. So I emulated him. And so I picked it up through initially mimicry, but then realizing as I would watch him, seeing the reasoning behind it. And that's kind of stuck with me. That's been really, if you strip away all the fancy bells and whistles, that's the core philosophy of how I do things and connect with people, whether it's to do an interview or connecting with them in person at some event and then doing an interview or working with them later.
And you've got a vast and deep background of interviewing people, and not just high-profile celebrities, which we'll get to in your background as kicking off as a radio host. We'll get to that, and also your own show that you had, which I've got written down here. Where's the name of it? You can probably prompt me before
Masters of the Mind. Yeah, Masters of the Mind. Yep.
Yeah, we'll get to that. You know, that advice that you picked up working at your grandfather's petrol pump station there, it sounds to me, reminds me of that advice we hear so often: aim to be interested rather than to be interesting. And you can only be, I'm sure you'll tell us, you can only really do well at being interested in others by being observant and noticing, like you said, noticing the number plate, the registration plate on a car, and asking that, and that being the prompt for us. And that actually does carry right over to listening during the interviews. Exactly what we're doing here, and hopefully I can emulate that too. Now, Michael, let's get to this, because when our viewers will visit your Substack and they scroll through the posts and the notes and also the about page, they'll see things like a picture of you with Gene Simmons. He's got his arm around your neck and you're smiling and he's smiling. What's the occasion?
I've met with him different times. We've met over the years, and oddly enough, he's one of the very first people who friended me on Facebook.
Oh, really?
Before so many people caught on to that he was there, and then he had to do a profile page and transfer everybody to that. But yeah, no, that particular photo you're referring to is I had met with him in Vegas because his band was doing a residency there. And we were talking when I went to go meet with him. He had not known that I had been in the military. And so I had actually said to him in our conversation, I said, oh, by the way, I've never thanked you on the time that I've known you for all the work you've done with wounded warriors and other military charitable groups. And I said, I'm a veteran and my grandfather served in World War II. And that was a thing that's really special to him with his background, because his mother had been in the concentration camps and her parents had perished there. And yeah, he grabbed me so tight and he pulled me in close to him and said, thank you. Thank God for people like you that did what you did. He's very, very, you can tell it hits close to home for him. And,
Yeah.
And when it's funny, I'll add a little side bit. So many people have different opinions of him. And yeah, sure, he can be a loudmouth and he's always promoting and selling. It's something he told me the first time I met him. He said, you're always selling, whether you're asking a girl on a date or you're trying to get your friends and buddies to go to a movie instead of play a card game. So you're always selling too. But connecting with him on that level, I had a completely different experience with him than what most people have told me they've had experiences with him.
I see.
They've had more of the seeing him on a promotional tour or something kind of thing in promotional mode. Whereas when I had that opportunity to say, hey, by the way, I want to thank you for something and open that door, then a completely different conversation and totally different way of being was there, especially on his half. I saw when he takes his shades off, he's notorious for having those shades on all the time. But when he took the shades off, it was like, I could see the emotion in his eyes. And that's my whole thing what I'm about is that's what makes a difference in interviews and connecting with people is finding that thing that nobody's talked to him about before or asked him about that hits really close to home for him. That's really important to him.
That's great, Michael. I'm a fan of Gene Simmons, not only as a performer in KISS, but more so as a businessman. And I think to me, he's the epitome of being in the business of show rather than being in show business. That's a mindset, and the business mindset of being, and also something that a favorite topic of mine is the performing persona or the alter ego. And of course, he was larger than life as the character in KISS. But we're not talking to Gene Simmons. We're not talking about KISS. We're talking to Michael Walker, and we're talking to the man who can help our viewers and our listeners in how to best go about inviting guests to their own show, to their own live, to their own podcasts in such a way that they can't help but want to say yes. And I know you're working on a product at the moment, Michael. I think the title of it is 7 Mistakes That Kill Your Guest Interview Requests. And I think coming out soon. Why did you feel it was so important to start working on this product right now?
I keep getting asked about my methodology a lot from friends and people that I've worked with. And I've never actually put anything down on paper. I thought maybe I should do that. And I don't feel like I have that many secrets or different methodologies, except that I am not a big fan of templates. And I have seen a lot of requests on the other end, having worked in entertainment much of my life. I've seen requests coming in, and so many people miss the opportunity because there's things they could do to improve their odds dramatically. For example, I've seen so many people put down the reason, they go into a lengthy explanation of why they created their podcast. And while that's very important to you, for the person who's busy and you're trying to get on your show, they don't have a lot of time to make a decision, yes or no, on whether they're going to do something. And so if you can keep your pitch or your request to them as tight and concise as possible and just give them the bare bones meat of what they need to know, that goes a long way. And I also tell people, and it'll be in the same product that you referred to, is find something that they haven't really been asked about before. Or because like I always pitch, do a lot of research on the person you want to interview. I have a real good solid why. That'd be the first thing I'll ask somebody is, why do you want to have them on your show? And if they don't have a good answer right away, then there's room to improve your pitch right there. Is look at like the last 5 interviews they've done. Maybe read the last book or magazine article that was done about them, things like that, and see what everybody else has asked, because they're going to be bored if you ask them the same 20 questions everybody else has the last 50 times they've been interviewed. Find something that's different in their background that you could connect to them with, even if it's something as simple as they went to the same college or they're from the same town that somebody you know is when your family is from, has that connection or something. Anything you can find is going to help kind of open that door and get their attention, and it's going to stand out from most of the pitches they get.
Okay. So there's pre-interview, there's the interview, and then there's post-interview. And I want to just touch on each of those phases because you've got ideas, experience, and things to teach on each of those. And so at the moment, we're talking about this product that you've got in the pipeline. I think it's coming out in a week or so, 7 mistakes that kill your guest interview requests. So that's the pre-interview. So you've got a guest in mind, maybe even a high-profile celebrity, and you're wanting to reach out to this person or their contacts or their people, their agent, and initiate communication with a hope and a view of getting them on your show. So what's the very first thing that comes to your mind? You identify somebody who's somebody you want to have on your show. What's the first thing you're going to do, Michael?
For me, it's if I'm already familiar with them, I'll look at, say, for instance, if I bought a product or book of theirs, I'll review that and go, okay, and have I heard them talk about that before? Look for the thing that hasn't been talked about before. And then also, I like to be aware of what do they have going on currently or what's coming up. Like you can do a little research and check like their website and see what's going on with them. Do they have a book coming out soon? Do they have a product coming out soon? And that's something you can actually also put in your pitch. I recommend putting it near the end. Is you make your pitch, but then at the end you say, hey, I would love to help promote. Let's say you, Mike, let's say you got a book coming out. I'd say, hey, Mike, I would also love to help promote your book and get word out. Is there a specific link you would like me to use, or is it okay just to send it to this link that you found on their website? And that shows that you're actually, now you've switched the conversation and the context of being a fan to being a potential collaborator. Somebody on their side, on their team. And that's a big thing that I like to do, because it makes it really easy for them to say yes, because who wouldn't want somebody else getting their name out there when they got a new product coming out?
Okay. And how do you initiate the actual contact? Is it by email? Do you recommend? Do you like old school pick up the phone and make a phone call? How would you initiate the first contact?
Great question. Yeah. A lot of times I'll look and see on their website if there's anything like a media contact page or something like that. I'll also see if I can find out if they have any preference. Do they like to be emailed? Or in the case of, I've been asked a lot about how I got Dan Kennedy to do an interview with me. And I actually literally, no kidding, you have to send him a fax, believe it or not. But it worked though. I communicated with him through the means that he prefers, and he sent me a fax back, and then eventually we got on the phone. Eventually he called me and we discussed doing the interview. But the initial conversation, everything had to happen by fax because that's the way he wanted to be communicated with.
What a coup.
Yeah. So I looked, there's some people too. I reached out through Twitter X.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have their own assistant or somebody handle their social, but every now and then you have some people who will answer you directly. An actor, Dave Foley, he was in the most recent season of Fargo, and he's also known for being in Kids in the Hall, comedian type actor. And I was observing I like him and I follow him. So I noticed that he doesn't use Facebook or Instagram, he uses X. And so I actually sent him a note and asked him about possibly doing an interview and also a project I was interested in maybe trying to work with him on. And he actually responded directly. So it's just doing a little bit of work to find out what do they like to be contacted through their social or the email, or Dan's the only one I know still using fax, but
Now, for those who don't know, Dan Kennedy, a big name in the circles of direct response marketing and sales and copywriting. And there's some more names, because I know this is a space that you've been very active in yourself, Michael, that is marketing, particularly direct response marketing. Other names that you've had, and those who are also in that same space and have an interest in direct response marketing and advertising will recognize these names. You've landed guests, Dan Kennedy, Perry Marshall, Mark Joyner. These are big, heavy hitter names. And so, all right, you sent a fax to Dan Kennedy because he uses fax. How did you land Perry Marshall?
I did kind of what I alluded to earlier. I saw that he had a new book coming out. This was a couple of years ago, called 80-20 Marketing and Sales. And I was already familiar with Perry too. So that he was somebody that was on my radar, had been on my radar for quite a while. I had followed him online. On the rare occasion when he would do an interview, I would consume that pretty quickly. And so I saw, and the 80-20 thing has always fascinated me with Richard Koch and all that. And so the title of his book really fascinated me. It's like, oh, 80-20 sales and marketing. I really want to see what he does with this. And so I reached out to him, and first I bought a copy. I pre-ordered a copy, and he offered, I think at the time it was like, you got the PDF first, like maybe a month in advance of the actual physical book. And so I consumed it quickly, and I reached out to his team. I wound up not dealing with him directly initially. It was through one of his people. But then when they vetted me, and then when they found out, oh, I'd already interviewed Dan Kennedy, Mark Joyner, and I did mention that, which is something you can also mention in your pitches if you've interviewed some significant people or people that they know, the guest knows that you're trying to get. And I deliberately mentioned Mark Joyner and Dan Kennedy in my pitch. And so then that got Perry's attention when his person said, oh, he's interviewed Dan Kennedy. And so then Perry literally got on the phone with me right after that and said, so tell me how you got Dan Kennedy. And that opened the door. And my enthusiasm for the 80-20 concept as well.
Yeah.
We connected over that. And then also this is deeper research, but I had known that Perry, because of my background in electronics and doing large scale production shows, I knew he wrote the first book on using Ethernet way back in the day before he ever became a marketer. And so I mentioned that to him too. And I think he said I was like only one of two people that had ever mentioned that to him. So wow. It was like, it created a quick little bond there, having those two things, that mentioning Dan Kennedy and then mentioning his very first book, which nobody ever asks him about. And I asked him about it. And so that opened the door, and then he agreed to do the interview.
And there's that lesson from your grandfather coming to the fore again, noticing and be interested first before seeking to be interesting. And you've noticed Perry's earlier work, and you brought that up with him, and that obviously had a significant impact on Perry, as you just said. These are great lands, big named guests. And so we're talking to Michael D. Walker about how to avoid the mistakes in sending an invite to a potential guest you, the viewer, the listener, wants on your show, your podcast, your live stream. Michael, when you send out a request, whether it's someone who's high profile or not, when you send out a request and you don't get any reply, you don't hear anything, what would you do? Would you forget about it? Would you follow up again? And how would you go about that?
That's a great question, because a lot of times, and I was guilty of this myself in my early days in radio and not getting responses sometimes. And human nature is you want to go, oh, they ignored me. They may be just simply so busy that they didn't have time to get to you, and it's on the back burner, something a higher priority for them. So I do like to follow up, and I often will, like, depending on as you do schedule out your show in advance a bit. So I would look at where was I wanting to interview them at in the lineup of people I'm interviewing, and I would base my follow-up on that. Okay, it doesn't sound like I'm going to get him in time for this period that I'm looking at. So I would just send out a follow-up and say, hey, I just wanted to see if you had reviewed the interview request, and you might even just re-summarize it real quick. and just say, hey, we're still really interested in having you on the show. And we understand you could be very busy. If there's a time that would work for you in the near future, we would love to work with you to make that happen.
Okay.
So you're trying to make it easy for them is the other core concept I try to teach is make it easy for them to say yes. You definitely don't want to do like I've seen some people do go, how come you haven't gotten back to me? You have no idea what their day may be like. I didn't think you would have to tell somebody that, but it's easy. We're human. It's easy to forget because we're looking at what we got on our plate in front of us. And it's easy to forget what the other person might have on their plate in front of them.
Very true. Very true. I see, Michael, you have an interesting philosophy too. So we've covered the pre-interview, which is the request, and giving you and your guest the best and easiest possible chance of them saying yes. If they're going to say yes, sometimes the answer is no, and it's got nothing to do with you personally, Michael, as a host, correct, or the viewer, or your show. It's just that other things just prevent it from happening right now. Okay, and at the point where they say, or they're about to say yes, you've got an interesting philosophy on how to help them say yes and schedule a day and time that best suits them. How do you go about that?
Yeah, I do something, and you and I have discussed this before, but I do something a little bit different from everybody else. And it's not better or right or wrong. It's just what has worked for me. I'll put a caveat on that. But my preference is with my philosophy of trying to get the yes right away and make it as easy and frictionless as possible, is I'll say, here's the dates I was looking at where I would love to interview you, and give them the dates and let them pick whatever time they want. But I'll put 3 to 5 dates on there. And I haven't been putting a link to a calendar because my philosophy was that's another step where they have to leave the invitation. It interrupts any connection I have of whatever I've said earlier in the pitch. And now they've got to leave and go navigate the calendar website and try to figure out the calendar website and do all that. I know some people say that's easy. They can have their assistant do that. But as I said, I'm playing for the yes right then.
Yeah.
But I also put on there, if these dates don't work for you, let me know what does work for you, or if you'd like a calendar. I've considered doing like you do, because you're a sharp cookie there, Mike. I've thought about putting the calendar link on there underneath anyways. I haven't tested that yet. But so far, with my methodology, as different as it is sometimes, that has worked really well. And for people the times I've put out there, the dates, 3 to 5 dates, they often come back and said, hey, we've got a block of time, these 2 dates. Could we do something on these 2 dates? Because after this date, then we're going to go do this event in Chicago or whatever, and we're not going to be available. And then the book is launching. So that leaves the room for them to come back to me and not make them have to take another step when the fire might be hot, so to speak, when they're feeling, okay, yeah, this is a good pitch. Let's do this.
Okay.
But, I say with the caveat, I have no idea how many times people may have not contacted me because that approach, but that's the philosophy behind it. And I always try to explain that is if I've got them in the mood, then I want them to say yes there in the moment.
I think what I like here, Michael, is that you've got the experience and the runs on the board to be able to speak to this subject with some authority. And that's why I like this product that you've got coming up next week or the week after, 7 mistakes that kill your guest interview requests. And readers, viewers, followers, subscribers will be able to see more about that launch just by subscribing to you on Substack and staying in touch with your announcements and notes. So, all right. So we've landed the interview.
Yep.
It's locked in and you've got your questions. Now you're in favor, correct me if I'm wrong, of offering questions in advance to your guest. Am I right?
Yes. And I imagine you want the reasoning behind that. I'm in plenty of podcast forums online. And one thing that I see a lot, at least in the current group of people that I've been interacting with is they're really against that. And they think there's something weird. I hear, it's my podcast, I'm going to ask whatever I want. And I'm like, well, here's the thing you're not thinking about is they don't know you. Maybe you send a good pitch and they feel some connection there. I go, okay, let's try this. But they're going to probably vet you. And so it's happened to me, even after I interviewed a number of people, that if I'd listened to my ego, I would have said, no, I'm not going to send advanced questions. But I quickly realized from my background in entertainment too, is you have ways of vetting people. So one easy way to do that, especially the larger book publishing houses, they'll ask you, we want to see the 20 questions that you want to ask. Yeah. And if you say no, now you've created friction there. You've come across as uncooperative. And here's a little secret is a lot of times they don't even care what the questions are. They want to see how easy you are to work with before it ever gets to their client, the writer or the actor or whoever the talent being on the interview. They kind of do a little bit of a vetting process to see how easy is this person to work with. And
what an excellent point.
Check you out before they send the top high profile performer to you.
What an excellent point that it's a vetting process and not necessarily to look at the 20 questions one at a time. That's not something that would automatically come to mind. That is a very good point. And you mentioned big name publishing houses. Simon & Schuster actually reached out to you to interview their authors. How did that come about and what was the outcome?
I believe the first person I ever interviewed that was affiliated with Simon & Schuster was Marcy Shimoff. And she had a book out, Happy for No Reason, but her background, she had worked on Chicken Soup for the Woman's Soul, which is a huge bestseller. And she'd been part of the movie and book The Secret back in the early to mid 2000s. And she had I think she had a several book deal with Simon & Schuster, but I contacted her directly and she agreed to the interview and we did the interview. And then, maybe a week later, I got a call from the publicity department at Simon & Schuster. They had heard the interview and she'd apparently had said good things about it. And so then they asked me about some authors that they wanted me to interview with books that were coming up on their roster, like in the next 3 to 6 months. And so I wound up doing work promoting Mark Hyland, I think was his name, but it was one author, but they had several authors that they wanted me to either promote or do interviews with. And I was like, this is great because I'm not having to go out and hunt up people. They gave me a list of here's books that we got coming down the pipeline. We'd love you to interview all of them, but which ones stand out to you? So I was able to pick and choose some people. And I chalked that up entirely to Marcy doing the interview with me. And then B, the methodology of my whole thing also we haven't really got into is I want to make the person I'm interviewing, whether they're already a well-known person or a complete unknown, I want to make them look good and shine and help make them really stand out and accentuate and highlight what's great about them that maybe hasn't been done in any way before.
Yeah, that's what it's about, isn't it? And particularly, look, I'm sure you mentioned there earlier about ego. And look, we've all got ego. And I think anybody who says I'm not ego-driven is deluded. We are all ego. It's our nature. But how you control it and how you channel it and the way we go. The point I'm going to make here is that if we are hosts of a show and we mistakenly believe it's all about us and not about our guests, in other words, always try and be interesting for our own benefit, then you're not making your guest, the star, the spotlight on them, are you? You're missing point, really. Yeah. Now, Michael, okay, so we're following Michael D. Walker's advice about how to invite a guest that you've identified you'd like to have on your show, your live, your video, your podcast, whatever it is. You've sent out some communication directly to them, maybe through an agent if they're very high profile. There's been some communication back. You've gone back and forth, which can happen. And there's a date and a time locked in. You're guilty. The show goes ahead and the interview is fantastic. It's recorded. The questions have been pre-vetted and to an extent, and now it's wrapped up. It's in the vault, so to speak. But that's not where it ends for Michael D. Walker. And you've got some advice to offer on this, because I dare to say this is actually where things start rather than end as far as your approach. Okay, speak to it, Michael.
Yeah. One thing I like to do is I noticed this is something I just noticed that other people were doing, that they would do the interview and maybe post it on their website and do a couple posts on their socials. But I like to send a copy to the guest with a thank you note, because they didn't have to do the show. They're doing me a huge favor.
How do you send a copy? In what format?
So this is, I get so much crap about this from people nowadays. It used to not be, but I still love use this, and I'll tell you the service too. It's very, very affordable and easy to do. Is Kunaki, KUNAKI.com. And I like to have a CD made from the MP3 or MP4 or WAV file, whatever format you're doing the final save with, and have it made onto CD and put it in a DVD case. So it's bigger than a CD case and it sticks out more like a movie. And then send that to them, because it's a physical reminder of the interview. They may set it on their coffee table at home or in their office. They may stick it on the shelf, but there's a physical reminder of our time together. And it's another way to keep me top of mind. And then I'm there. My philosophy is that I'm going to work with them as long as possible. I want to work with them on their next project, and the project after that, the project after that. So a way to demonstrate that is I send them a physical copy of the CD in the DVD case, and I put a thank you note inside that outer sleeve of it. So they see the thank you note inside it. And so they're going to open it up and read it, because everybody sends email thank yous or whatever, and that's kind of in the ether and it kind of goes away. Whereas a physical thank you note with the physical copy of the interview, that stands out compared to what most people do these days. And
Absolutely.
Also, I see this in forums where people go, why would I thank them? I thank them at the end of the interview. I'm like, here's a way to differentiate yourself, to stay top of mind. And they go, hey, I like the way this person does business. Let's do something else with them. And the other thing too is I know people send little jump drives with the MP3 of the interview on it, right? And that's great. That's fine. You can do that too. But the reason I do mine is it's bigger and it's more noticeable, and it fits more like if they have movies or books, they put it on the shelf next to the books or whatever. Because a digital file, when have you ever seen a digital file in somebody's office or their home when you go to visit them? Never. You don't see the digital file.
It's saved on their hard drive somewhere.
And for people that are wondering, it costs roughly $4 or something to do that, actually, because it's $2 for Kanaki to burn the thing to DVD and throw it in a DVD case for you, and then they'll mail it to wherever you tell them to mail it to. So it winds up being, unless you're mailing it overseas somewhere, if it's in the continental United States, it's roughly like $4, $5 tops to do this. But it's a great way to stay top of mind. And then I also put in the thank you note too. Hey, as I told you when we talked before, I'm not a one and done person. I'm into the big picture, the long game. Let me know next time you have something coming up. If there's anything I can do to help you promote something or help you in any way with whatever project you got coming up next, let me know. I'd love to be of service.
So what you're doing here, Michael, what you're advising our viewers and listeners here in the broader sense is to follow up in a meaningful way that makes the whole program and the experience lasting and memorable and to stand out in the guest's mind. And the reason you're doing that is first and foremost to help the guest to have something that's more keepable and usable rather than a digital file that may never get opened or whatever. But not only that, because this gets to the next point. Okay, this does get to self-interest. There's no denying it, but there's no crime committed here. And we're not going to send the police to your door knocking, because there's no crime in wanting to pursue a business relationship with those guests who are open to it. And so this is very much, so when I think of Michael D. Walker, I think of the guy that used to be on radio, the guy that had a successful interview show, the guy that has a photo with Gene Simmons, who's looking very close and happy with him. But the thing that stands out is the guy, in my mind, the guy that does things a little bit differently because he thinks long term rather than the, as you say, to quote unquote, one and done interview.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about now, Michael, is the pursuit of potential business relationships, mutual benefits. All right, let's go. Tell us what that's about for you.
For me, I can give you a couple examples. When I interviewed Kevin Hogan, the author of The Psychology of Persuasion, and he typically didn't do interviews either. He liked how I did the interview and the follow-up. And then he was doing an event in Las Vegas. And actually I interviewed him, and then I interviewed a friend of his named Dave Lacani, who also taught different persuasion and things like that. He did an event at one point called the Renegades of Persuasion, which was an interesting event. So anyways, I'd also interviewed Dave. Well, Kevin had said to me, hey, we should see if we can get together sometime. I'm doing this event in Vegas. My schedule's going to be pretty busy, but would you be interested in coming by? And I was like, of course. And then simultaneously, Dave reached out to me and said, hey, I'm speaking at Kevin Hogan's event. And he said, I would love to have you come and be my guest and hang out with me. And so It was a perfect opportunity. I went there, and then Dave introduced me to Kevin because we'd never met in person. And then we got to talking, and it turned out Kevin was at the time having some trouble he had a crew that would help him with videotaping his event and doing the audio and everything for it during the event. And he knew my background with Cirque du Soleil and radio and all that. So he said, hey, what would you recommend? Or is there any crazy chance that you would help me out with my audio and video for my next event? And I said, yeah, let's talk. And so for about I think it was like 5-6 year period when he did live events in Vegas, he had me be his advance man and go walk the room and deal with the staff in the hotel and make sure everything was up to snuff and ready for his team to come in. And then a couple times when he had a couple special events, he had me help do the audio and video for them for the DVD releases. So there was just one example of suddenly I go from being the interviewer to I'm now helping him do live events because he knows my background with Cirque du Soleil and doing large events. And it just became like a really easy transition into being a working partner, having a working partnership with him.
When you say Kevin Hogan, you liked your follow-up. Was that follow-up, did that include the mailing of the CD in the DV case?
Yeah. Yep.
And did he comment on that, specifically on that?
Yeah, I believe so. And Dave Lacani did as well, because that event that Dave did in Vegas called the Renegades of Persuasion, the whole audience it was a smaller event. It was like roughly 80 people, I think, in the room or something like that. But it was amazing, the people in the audience that were there.
Yeah.
And he'd mentioned, hey, I'm doing this event. Is there any chance you could come and let me do a little mini interview with you on stage? Because he had known that I'd created my Masters of the Mind interview series during a really difficult period in my life where my wife at the time had a lot of health struggles. We had a newborn baby, and I was on FMLA from Cirque du Soleil. And I started the interview series as a way to start trying to generate revenue while I'm at home trying to take care of her and my son. And he liked the CD, physical copy of the interview in the DVD. So what I did is I wound up spending, I don't know, $200. But I just found out, I said, how many people are going to be at this thing since you're going to have me up on stage with you and interviewing me about how I did the series? And he told me the number, and I said, hey, this is pretty cool that you're doing this for me. How about I make it even better? How about I get copies, do the same thing, but it's in the gift bag for all your people that attend? And so he loved that idea.
Ah, wow.
And
that's
so
a bit of.
So then everybody, all these big players, people, big names, there was people like Michael Lovitch from the Hypnosis Network. There was just a bunch of people, the people in that room, it was amazing. I was like, wow, there's easily 40, 50 people here I'd love to interview. So they all took home something physically reminding them of me in the little mini interview that Dave did with me on stage.
It's what comes to mind. It sounds like you've been working the philosophy, the old advice of Zig Ziglar, that you'll have more fun and enjoy more success when you concentrate more on helping other people get what they want rather than focusing only on what you want. And the way you've just described that experience with Kevin Hogan on stage, etc., it really matches that entirely. And in fact, it comes through the whole, as you've described your whole journey from being an 8-year-old and noticing lessons from your grandfather, right all the way through to your radio hosting days, your experience with the tech side of audio and video, the podcast or the show that you did interviewing guests, masters of the mind, and being approached by Simon and Schuster and others, publishing houses, to interview authors and other work that you've done for other big name publishing houses. I wanted to ask, we're getting close to the end here, Michael, and I want to be conscious of your time, and we value your time and respect your time and those of our viewers as well. I've got a couple of final questions here. The most memorable guest, your most memorable guest.
Ooh, I have two people that come to mind. One of them, I can't say their name because of why it was memorable. But I did do a Substack post about it. I titled it, I just put it on LinkedIn the other day as well, The Best Interview I Never Aired.
Saw it.
Yeah.
Saw the post. Yeah.
It was about an author who I had asked me for 20 questions up front and did that whole process. And then when it came time to do the interview, said, you don't need to use those. I feel real comfortable with you. We've connected. You can ask me anything. So I did. And she wound up opening up and telling some great stories about what she'd had to overcome to become the things that happened prior to her becoming a best-selling author. And she named names and everything about good and bad. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. And then at the end of the interview, she said, hey, okay, are we done recording? And I said, yeah. She goes, the recording's off. Yeah. Then she said, I don't want you to air that. And I was like, what? And so this is the most memorable one, because I was like, well, why? I said, you were great. You were fantastic. You were lit up. You were the most expressive I think I've ever heard you. And she said, yeah, I got so comfortable with you that I let my hair down and I forgot we were recording until the very end when you did the sum up and said, hey, I want to be respectful of your time. And the last 5 minutes here, what's next for you? And she said, I forgot we were recording. And I go, oh, could I edit out the parts you didn't want out there? And she said, no, I think that's putting more work on your plate. I'd rather come back. Let's do the interview again, because I did enjoy talking to you. And I will give you 3 or 4 questions to ask me at different intervals so I remember the points I want to get across in the interview and not forget that you're recording. So that's probably the most memorable one. And then I could give a real quick one. The very first one I did for the Masters of the Mind, again, I'll leave the name out, but with the whole setup and the promo for the interview was that this person was going to tell some inside secrets of how they did what they did. And when it came time to do the interview, they had been approached by somebody about some other opportunity or some other event. And so they just wanted to pitch that the whole time and not talk about what we'd promised the listeners. And I was just like, oh, no, this is a disaster.
Yeah, right.
And so what wound up happening was we had a very awkward conversation with them about what happened, because we didn't deliver what we promised. And they apologized, but obviously that interview it only aired the one time, and then I took it off and I did an apology to people too, because it just wound up that I tried numerous times to get them back on to do the original thing we intended to do, and it just never happened with timing with what was going on in their life and their business and stuff. So those are the 2 most memorable. One was great interview, so good they forgot they were recording and then didn't want me to air it. And the other one, they didn't do what they said they were going to do.
Great experiences. I just wonder whether the original interview with the author who forgot that the camera was rolling and really opened up missed out on what could have been a really breakthrough interview as far as promoting her and her, because you said it's about connection, and especially today.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Mike, because actually you interviewed my friend Lori Morgan, and she replied, put a comment on that post when I posted about that. And she said, wow, she goes, I wonder what would have happened if she'd let you air that, because it sounds like she really was fully expressed and open and vulnerable. And I said, yeah, and I said it in the close of the Substack post. I said, unfortunately, I don't think I ever saw her be that way publicly. And I think she really missed out on something, because she's a wonderful person. And it just opened up other ways that people could connect with her, just how she was being. She was phenomenal.
Michael, time always flies when you're having fun. So let's wrap this up, shall we? Michael D. Walker on Substack. Your publication is Book with Legends. It's as you describe it, pardon me for looking down, Michael, and viewers, because I'm reading, the weekly playbook. This is your publication on Substack, Michael. The weekly playbook for booking fascinating guests, and that's what we've been talking about, asking unforgettable questions and building powerful relationships through interviews. And you've helped us with some insights from your background and experience on how to go about asking and inviting guests to your own podcast, live stream, video, whatever it is. We're speaking to the viewer here, Michael. And you've shared some other stories from your past as well. You're working on a product which is going to help our viewers and our listeners in avoiding the biggest mistakes in in requesting interviews with guests, be they high profile or non-high profile names and celebrities. And the working title of your product is, I presume this is a digital product or a PDF?
Yeah, it's going to be digital. Yeah. And I may offer an add-on option to do a workshop for people that want the coaching, a little bit of hands-on coaching, like via Zoom.
Oh, terrific.
I offer that too, because it is a product that the subtitle of it, 7 Mistakes That Kill Your Interview Requests, and then how to fix them in the next 30 minutes for your next guest request.
Oh, so very good.
I try to keep it really succinct and to the point, show the 7 mistakes that I've seen the most that really hurt, and then what you can do to fix that, and the reasoning, real short reasoning why behind it, so that you understand it. So that way you may even come up with your own way of doing it that fits you and your personality and your style of doing business.
I can't wait to see it, Michael, and we can stay tuned on your Substack to get your notifications on when that is actually launched and how to go about it. You'll publish that on your own platform or somewhere else, but nonetheless, you'll have announcements coming out about that, either in your notes or those that the recommendation is that you, the viewer, will subscribe to Michael's publication on Substack so that you do get the notifications. I know of Michael's background and his work apart from what we've been discussing here, and I don't hesitate to recommend considering Michael's product that he's got coming out. And also he's mentioning that there is a one-on-one coaching service available too on Zoom, and that's something that you might want to look at and take serious consideration for as well. Michael D. Walker, Book with Legends, what a pleasure it's been having you on the Star Maker live show. You are the star of the day, Michael. There's no doubt about it. And I'm happy that spotlight's right on you. And thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewers who have been with us live and who might be watching or listening to the recording on some YouTube or here on Substack or some podcast channel, thank you very much. Have you got a parting word?
No, hey, first, thanks for having me. And thanks to everybody that's watching and catching the replay or however you managed to take in the information. Really appreciate being on this platform with you, Mike. Been watching you from the time I started on Substack. I haven't been here that long, but really great to see what you're doing. And I can't wait to see who else you bring on board. I know it's going to be fun and entertaining and very informative, but I'm really appreciate being invited, and I appreciate anybody that wants to subscribe. I'm looking forward to chatting with you or responding to your comments or interacting however we wind up interacting.
Wonderful, Michael. Thank you for the kind words. And to our viewers, thank you for viewing. And until next time, be good to yourself and be good to others. Bye for now.
Take care.